Good morning. I am cooking up some green beans and potatoes for Sabbath, getting ready. And I've just been pondering something for the last couple days that I really want to share with people, because I think there's a lot of people that are moving to the country that maybe lack some information that that if they had could be safer and more comfortable and make life a lot easier for them if they knew beforehand. And what I'm talking about is firewood. I'm cooking on my little cabin tender wood cook stove, and you've seen that in previous videos if you've watched any of our other videos. The distributor contacted me yesterday and asked me to do a video on the cabin tender, and I do intend to. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but I will. I'll do that. Running a wood cook stove is a little bit different than just a regular stove. But the principle of proper firewood for a cook stove and just a heating stove is basically the same. The type of wood that you use, and so the size of it even. But I really wanted to just take a few minutes and go over different types of wood, what type of wood you use for different situations. You know, a lot of people don't realize there's different kinds of fire, and you use different kinds of wood for different needs. You know, my husband teases me about having 3 guitars, and I just tell him, you know, they're like different screwdrivers in your toolbox. Each one is for a different need. And anyway, you use firewood differently depending on what you need. And I'd like to explain that a little bit. So come along, I'll take you outside and show you what I mean. Okay, we're out here. This is some wood that we have. We have a wood box in the house, but we also put some on the front porch that just to kind of help keep it drier, because we don't have a woodshed yet. But here where we live in Kentucky, there fortunately is a sawmill right down the road, and they have these pieces, just I guess that they cut off that they don't need of the log before they saw the lumber up. And they have all different types. They have oak, they have hickory, they have ash, they have poplar, maple, walnut, cherry. It's just a mix. And because these pieces are very small, they have a large surface area for the amount of wood that you have, and so it's going to burn very fast and it's going to burn very hot. In the morning, when you first see it at night, when you go to bed, when you heat with wood, you stoke it up, or you put a lot of firewood in it, and you put a more dense firewood, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a few minutes. But you stoke it up, and then you damp it down, or you turn the air supply off a little bit. Well, not completely off, but you turn it down so that the fire burns very slow. And that's a good thing in the sense that you don't have to get up at night so much and put more firewood in it. But it's a bad thing in the sense that when a fire burns slow like that, it tends to build up more soot and creosote and stuff in the stove itself and in the chimney. And so a good way to help to burn off a lot of that is when you first wake up in the morning, open up the dampers wide and start a good hot morning fire. And this stuff right here is really great. You put a whole bunch of this in there and you'll have a roaring fire in just a few minutes. If you don't have small pieces like this, you can chop up kindling, you know, whatever wood you have, into small pieces. But there are certain types of wood that I prefer to use for a good hot fire, a fast fire. Poplar is here in central Kentucky. The tulip poplar tree is a very light wood. It's not a real dense. It's not considered a hardwood, as far as I may be considered a hardwood, but it's not as hard as like oak and hickory and ash and these woods that are really dense. But poplar is my wood of choice for a good hot morning fire, and it works great. But there are some other woods. I also like to use maple. It's not as dense as the oak and hickory. Dogwood, even though it's a very dense wood, it burns hot and fast. Now, a lot of people may ask about burning evergreens, cedar and pine and stuff like that. If that's all you have, then that's what you have to use, but I really don't recommend it. For one, it builds up a lot more creosote deposits in the chimney, but also, I don't know if you've ever seen a forest fire. I grew up in Alabama, and when evergreens burn, they pop a lot, and so they throw out embers, and so if you're burning that in your stove, be prepared, because you're going to have embers pop out on your floor and stuff, and it could be potentially hazardous. But at any rate, because we have these, we call it slab wood. Maybe you've seen in other videos the pile out in the field there at the end of the garden. We're trying to get it cut up. I ordered 4 slabs. They're 4 bundles. They're $10 a bundle, and that's a huge amount of firewood. And the only thing is, it is a little messy, and you do have to cut it all up. But I don't mind it. Recently, we were at a thrift store, and there was a little Stihl MS-170 chainsaw there that it was such a blessing, because our big chainsaw was getting to be a little too much for me. And so I called the little MS-170 my Pee-wee chainsaw, so I can still, and it's perfect for this kind of stuff. And so this is a mixture of red oak, white oak, hickory ash, just whatever, all kind of stuff. But because of the way that it's cut, you can see it's thin, it's small pieces, it has a huge surface area. This is going to burn really fast, and it's dry. And that's another thing a lot of people don't realize. When you cut down a tree for firewood, you can't just burn it right away. That has to cure. The water content in it has to come out. It's ideal to cut your wood a year in advance. When I lived in Kentucky before I married Kaylin, we always, like this winter, we would be cutting our firewood for next winter, so it was always well cured. That's ideal, but I have, I have used it as soon as 6 months if I needed to. But anyway, this is mostly wood that you would use for a good fast hot morning fire. And also in a wood cook stove, it's easier to control the temperature if you use wood like this. If you need to just heat it up quick to cook something on the stove top, but you don't want to, heat the house up for so long, you can use this. Whereas if you put a dense wood in there that's going to take a long time to burn, it takes a little longer to heat up, and it's going to have a longer span of hot time, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but anyway, the heat is going to last longer. So this is really good for cooking in a wood cook stove. Poplar, the woods that I mentioned, maple. But if you want something that, well, let me take you over to the other wood pile where we have some stuff. I call them stokers or nightsticks. So I'll take you over there and show you those. We kind of have a mixture of wood on this pallet out here too. We just have this kind of covered up with plastic, so some of it gets wet here and there. So I try to keep some of it up on the porch there where I showed you, so that it can be drying. Just beyond this pile, I don't know if you watched our Widowmaker video, but there's the stump for the Widowmaker, and this is some of the wood from that. It's very light, even though it's a big chunk. This was a sycamore tree, and sycamore is okay firewood. I really don't prefer it, because if you cut it down green and try to cut it up with a splitting maul or an axe or something, it's very difficult to split, unless it's to this stage, very pithy and dry. So I would consider this a good piece of wood for a morning hot fire, even though it's a little larger. If I want it to last a little bit longer, I could put some big ones like this. But like this piece right here, this is a white oak, and man, is it heavy. That thing probably weighs 5 or 6 times the other piece that I just showed you. But it's a nice size. Rounds actually that are completely round and not split actually burn longer, and for our stove, limbs that are, I don't know, maybe 5 inches in diameter would be really good night stokers to put on at night, because they're dense, The fact that they're not open, you don't have a lot of the wood exposed, it's protected by the bark, is going to slow down the burn, so it's going to make your fire last a lot longer. It's a little cooler fire until it gets going, but it has a lot more BTUs in the sense that it's going to last a lot longer. You're not going to have to get up as much in the night and stoke your fire if you use something that's really dense and heavy like this. And I need to take a few into the house, so I'm just going to stick this one in my wheelbarrow. But anyway, this is kind of what I'm talking about the rounds. You know, this right here is locust, and it's very dense. Locust is a decent firewood. It's really best for fire posts. This stuff is hard as rock, just about. And anyway, I don't know, I hope that helps a little bit, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what kind of firewood to use and how to manage a fire. And if I've not answered any questions, or if something's not clear, just leave me a message and let me know, because I really just want to help people understand how to get the best use out of their wood stove, whether it's a cook stove or just a heating stove, and also to be safe, because if you run your stove improperly, you can overfire it and cause a chimney fire. Or, you know, if you use green wood, you're going to be cold. I mean, it's just not going to work, and you're going to build up a lot of creosote and junk in your chimney. And also another thing, if you have the triple insulated chimney like we do, if you go to clean that, be sure and get a nylon brush. Don't ever put a steel brush inside of a triple wall stainless steel chimney like that. It'll scratch it up and mess it up. But anyway, I hope that helped, and if I've forgotten something, just let me know and I'll try to answer it. I don't know everything, but I have a lot of years of experience using wood stoves. We grew up, you know, we heated with wood on the farm I grew up on, and then many years that I lived in Kentucky before, and of course now with Kaylin and I living here on our homestead. So anyway, gotta go finish cooking those green beans. See you in the next video.